BT, a disappointing end to the season for the Johnnies.
No, it was. They didn't play well at all. St. John's, really a rough time to play. Basically, your worst game of the year. And listen, this is the deal with the NCAA tournament. There's no, it's a 7-game series or it's a best of 5 where you have a rough night. You can kind of come back and try to make amends. St. John's just shot the ball as awful as I've seen them shoot, and I've seen some rough nights, particularly earlier in the year. They were bad. They just didn't play well at all. Arkansas, I knew they'd be physical. I knew they'd be longer, certainly a different physical presence, but St. John's made no shots. They made no shots.
Yeah, Arkansas didn't play a great game either, and that's kind of the point. But this can't be a surprise. I mean, St. John's, unfortunately. So now if you step back and look at a big picture, they were the only 2 seed to lose, right? You get the majority of favorites winning, so they were the only one to really get upset. I know a 3 seed in Wisconsin lost or whatever. That's happened a couple of times. But the fact that they were the only 2 seed to be home early outside of the Sweet 16, for me, there is no difference between the first round, the first win on Thursday night or yesterday. They needed to really get to the next round. As I said on Friday, that to really just shut everybody up from any kind of criticism, the very least they could do is get to the Sweet 16. Now, for me, it does not take away from all they accomplished in the regular season. But I did not have these great expectations like I think a lot of fans did. You think this takes away from St. John's season? Because, I mean, even, was it Lewis who said it after the game? Even he said it. Feels like they accomplished nothing. Where are you at as far as the big picture for St. John's?
Well, I mean, listen, it's been 25 years since they won an NCAA tournament game. So I get it. The expectations were certainly to get out of Providence and get into the Sweet 16, and right now probably be on a trip on a plane to San Francisco. So when you look at that and you look at the regular season championship, the conference tournament championship, the number 2 seed, all those things shout you've got to get to the second weekend. They didn't, but I still deem it a success. I mean, St. John's had to change a culture that was, just unspeakably bad and non-existent for a long time. And think about, I know that, a loss is a loss, but St. John's, at one point, and the final score got away from them. You foul, you make a couple of foul shots, whatever. St. John's was down by 4 with 4 minutes to go. One starting forward shot, 1 for 10, Aaron Scott. I just want to illuminate how hard they play. R.J. Lewis, by far, his worst game of the year, 3 for 17, and I want to get back to that, why he was benched. And Kadari Richmond, some of those fouls were awful. I'm not going to make an excuse. Nobody wants to hear it. But he played 16 minutes and he fouled out. 16 out of 40, and he's been one of the best players in the country all season. So when you add all that up, St. John's should have been blown out. Like, if you told me that that's the 3 things I just mentioned, Scott 1 for 10, Lewis 3 for 17, Kadari 5 points, playing 16 minutes, I'm saying St. John's getting waxed by 15 or 20. And then you mix in the fact that they shot 2 for 22, I'm saying maybe they lost by 30. But they didn't because they they work. They had 28 offensive rebounds. They had more than Arkansas. They only had 6 turnovers, but which is fewer than Arkansas. They just didn't make any shots. And the whole, the thing with Rick and Calipari, Calipari now has an advantage over Rick that is undeniable. Calipari, people could think this. If they do, I don't know what to tell them. That's have the opinion. That's fine. Calipari did not outcoach Rick Pitino. He didn't do it.
But his team won.
I know. No, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
His team didn't play great either, but it leads me to think that maybe St. John, and for all the people who said Sweet 16, it's got to be Sweet 16, I hope they have that same energy when I was getting crap last week saying that no matter what, this season to me would already be a success for all the reasons that you mentioned. They won the Big East the way that they did. Putting themselves back on the map, to me, was more important as far as more important than how far they went in the tournament this year. Next year might be different, and I know the expectations changed in season with the St. John team, but maybe they shouldn't have been a 2 seed. And look at what UConn did, even in the loss to, many people think, the best team in the country in Florida. There was a good chance UConn would have won that game, and they would have been moving on. And then what? Then would you rather have UConn season or St. John season? So from where St. John's was coming from, I still think that even with the loss falling short going to the Sweet 16, I still think it was a very successful season no matter what. But when you're a 2 seed and you want to be talked about with the big boys, and then the only 2 seed in the tournament to lose this year, and you have UConn fighting with Florida, going Arkansas and Calipari, not Florida, then I can see how people could maybe minimize what St. John's did this year, say maybe they were a little overrated or shouldn't have got that 2 seed.
I think you could kind of have both views there. I think certainly, just looking at St. John's fans leaving the arena on Saturday and then going back to the hotel, and seeing understandably the long faces, the sad face. I get it. You crushed. I mean, the players were crushed. The coaching, it looked like Rick had tears in his eyes at the press conference.
What happened with the benching, BT?
Okay. So I am with Rick on this. Now, R.J. Lewis was benched, and he didn't play the final, 5 minutes or so. And I did not ask Rick about this. The last thing I'm going to do is bother him now. I'll circle back to it at some point. Not now. Give him space. He was not benched because he didn't shoot well. And I think that's where a lot of people get it twisted. And by the way, he shot, just 3 for 17 is just, it's atrocious. But it happens. It's sports. They're not robots. The reason why R.J. Lewis was stuck on the bench, and I got to tell you, Sal, I believe rightfully so, is because he became selfish. He did not play defense, and he put himself in front of the team. And when you do that for anybody, you're probably going to pay the price. When you do it for somebody like Rick, who certain virtues and principles are non-negotiable, you're going to find you behind on the bench. And I feel terribly for the kid because he was amazing this year. But, his shot selection was deplorably bad. It was bad. And then really watching him and sitting courtside, I could really see it because I could see the body language of some of his teammates, like putting their arms up, like, what are you doing? I saw this twice from Zuby, who played fantastic. I don't want to say that he was just breaking off plays and ignoring things. I'm not going to go that far. But he certainly took it upon himself to try to play some hero ball. And Rick said, not happening. I got no problem with it.
Yeah, it's good insight, because if it were just because of the shooting, then I think you could question it, be like, hey, this is your guy all year long, go down with him. Even then, you could say, you shouldn't be out there because he's cold, but at least then you have more of an argument against Rick. If it were because he was doing things that were not, if they were selfish, not the betterment of the team, and Pitino doesn't like that, then you got to bench him. So I have no problem with that.